Why I couldn't stop laughing at my sister's pregnancy news. When my sister told me she was pregnant, I laughed. It wasn't a hearty, genuine laugh, the kind that spills out of you uncontrollably when something is genuinely funny. No, it was a nervous, sharp sound. Like a reflex. I laughed because the alternative was to cry. And I wasn't prepared for that. I suppose I should explain. It's not that I'm heartless or that I don't care about my sister. Quite the opposite. Really. Claire and I were close. Impossibly close. For most of our childhood. But as life does, it pulled us in different directions. She went one way. And I went another. We were always on parallel tracks. Running alongside each other but never truly meeting at the same station. Until now. That day. The announcement hit me harder than I expected. I sat across from her in the small cafe where we'd met up after weeks of rescheduling. Claire looked radiant. More so than usual. Her eyes sparkled with a kind of excitement I hadn't seen in years. And there was a glow about her that wasn't just from the soft afternoon light filtering through the window. I should have known then. But I was too wrapped up in my own life to notice. When she finally said it, "I'm pregnant," it felt like the world tilted on its axis. For a moment. I couldn't breathe. I couldn't think. I just stared at her. And then. The laugh came. Sharp. Ugly. And out of place. The thing is, Claire and I had always been different. I was the sensible one. The practical one. I'd focused on my career. Climbing the ladder in corporate America. While she pursued more abstract dreams, art. Travel. The things that never interested me much. She'd always been more carefree. Floating through life while I was the one with the plan. We used to joke about it. But lately. It didn't feel like a joke anymore. Our differences had become a gulf. One that neither of us knew how to bridge. So. When she told me she was pregnant, I laughed because I didn't know how else to react. It felt absurd to me that Claire, of all people, was going to be a mother. Claire, who still couldn't keep a plant alive. Claire, who had never been able to commit to anything more than a 6-month lease. And yet, here she was, telling me that she was about to embark on the most permanent, life-altering commitment of all. After the laugh died on my lips, I forced a smile and congratulated her. The words tasting hollow in my mouth. She didn't seem to notice. She was too caught up in her own excitement. Showing me ultrasound pictures and talking about how she and her boyfriend fiancé. Now. I realized we're planning for the baby. I nodded along. Making all the right noises. But inside. Something in me was crumbling. It wasn't jealousy. At least. I didn't think it was. I had never wanted children. I had made that decision a long time ago. And I was at peace with it. But hearing Claire talk about her pregnancy. About the future she was building. It made me question everything I thought I knew about myself. Was I really content with my life? Or had I just convinced myself that I was? I didn't sleep well that night. I lay awake. Staring at the ceiling. My mind racing. I thought about Claire. About how she'd always been the more impulsive of the two of us. I thought about how her life had been a series of whims. Of chasing after whatever caught her fancy at the time. And yet. Here she was. Preparing for motherhood. Something so grounded. So real. And me? I was alone in my apartment. In the life I had meticulously built for myself. A life that suddenly felt cold and empty. The days that followed were a blur. I went through the motions at work. But my mind was elsewhere. I couldn't stop thinking about Claire. About her pregnancy. About the fact that she was about to become a mother. It consumed me. And the more I thought about it, the more unsettled I became. I started to question everything. My career, which had once been the center of my world, now seemed insignificant. The long hours. The late nights. The sacrifices I'd made, they all felt pointless in the face of something as monumental as creating a new life. What was I really working for? What did I have to show for it? A nice apartment. A fat paycheck. But no real connection to anyone or anything. I found myself avoiding Claire. I made excuses when she called. Pushed off plans when she tried to meet up. I couldn't face her. Not while I was in this state. I didn't want her to see the cracks in the facade I'd built. The one that said I was perfectly fine. That I had everything under control. But, of course, you can only avoid someone for so long. One afternoon, she showed up at my door. Unannounced. I could tell from the look on her face that she knew something was wrong. But she didn't push. She just smiled and said she missed me. That she wanted to spend time together before the baby came. I couldn't say no to that. We spent the day together. Walking through the city. Talking about everything and nothing. It felt good. Almost like old times. But there was an undercurrent of tension that neither of us acknowledged. I could feel the weight of my unspoken thoughts pressing down on me. But I didn't know how to release it. As the weeks went by, I watched as Claire's belly grew. She was radiant. Full of life in a way I had never seen before. I, on the other hand, was shrinking. I became a shadow of myself. Consumed by doubt and uncertainty. I felt like I was standing on the outside of my own life. Watching it slip away from me. The turning point came one night. Months later. When Claire invited me over to her apartment for dinner. I hesitated at first. But something in her voice made me agree. When I arrived, I was greeted by the smell of home-cooked food and the sound of soft music playing in the background. Claire was glowing. Her belly round and full. Her eyes bright with anticipation. I felt a pang of something regret. Maybe. But I pushed it down. We sat down to eat. And for the first time in months, I felt a sense of peace settle over me. We talked about the baby. About the future. And as Claire spoke, I realized something. She was happy. Truly. Deeply happy. And it wasn't the kind of fleeting happiness she had always chased after. This was something deeper. More profound. It was the kind of happiness that comes from creating something bigger than yourself. In that moment, I understood. I understood why she had chosen this path. Why she had decided to bring a new life into the world. It wasn't about her. It was about something bigger. Something more meaningful than either of us had ever imagined. As I left her apartment that night, I felt lighter. As if a weight had been lifted off my shoulders. I still didn't want children. That hadn't changed. But I no longer felt the need to compare myself to Claire. To measure my life against hers. We were on different paths. But that didn't mean one was better than the other. They were just different. In the months that followed, I found myself reconnecting with Claire in a way I hadn't in years. I was there when her baby was born. Holding her hand as she brought a new life into the world. And when I held my niece for the first time, something inside me shifted. It wasn't a desire to have my own children. But rather a realization that life is full of unexpected twists and turns. What matters is how we choose to navigate them. How we find meaning in the choices we make. Looking back, I realized that my laughter that day wasn't about Claire. It was about me. It was about my own fears and insecurities. My own struggle to come to terms with the choices I had made. But now, standing on the other side of it all, I see things more clearly. Life is messy and unpredictable. And sometimes, the things that scare us the most are the very things that help us grow. Claire's pregnancy was one of those things for me. It forced me to confront parts of myself that I had been avoiding for years. And in doing so, it helped me find a deeper sense of peace. A greater understanding of who I am and what I want out of life. I didn't laugh at Claire's pregnancy because I thought it was funny. I laughed because it was terrifying. But now, looking at my sister and her beautiful baby girl, I know that sometimes the scariest moments are the ones that lead us to the most profound growth. And for that, I'm grateful.